What's up, everybody, and welcome back to Joystick Ayrton. So in our last video, we talked about the GPD Win 4. In the video before that, we talked about the ROG Ally. And in this video, we're going to talk about verified games on the Steam Deck and game compatibility issues with the ROG Ally and any other Windows-based handheld. So let's go ahead and dive right into that. Okay, so it is now August. We're 2/3 of the way through the year, which just feels absurd, but we have Baldur's Gate 3 coming, Armored Core 6, a whole lot more deck verified games, and they should be compatible on your ROG Ally, right? Yeah, to an extent sometimes. And we're going to talk about that on the ROG Ally, other Windows-based handhelds, the Steam Deck, and more. So let's go ahead and dive into that. Now, there's a bunch of different games that are deck verified. Some of them run flawlessly. Hogwarts Legacy, basically any From Software game or Bethesda game. But there's also some verified games like Remnant 2 that just stutter at 16 FPS and is a terrible experience. And how it made it through the process of becoming deck verified, nobody truly understands completely. But then you have just ROG Allies, you have WinMax 2s, GPD Win 4s, and these Windows-based handhelds where if you watch a review of them, reviewers typically are like, they'll run pretty much any game you want, and that's true to some extent, but it also isn't without its issues. So with that being said, I want to start off with the number one title that comes to mind for me, which is Hogwarts Legacy. Now, Hogwarts Legacy is deck verified. You can lock it at 40 frames per second and have an awesome experience. You can let it loose and bounce between 35 and 45, depending on what's going on at that moment in gameplay. But no matter what Windows-based handheld you have, ROG Ally, GPD Win 4, WinMax 2, AYN, any of theirs, you have stuttering issues. And this kind of leads back to just an issue with the game with memory leakage and a bunch of other things going on. But the game is stuttery. You might be 40 to 70 frames per second on any given gameplay moment, but it's stuttering depending on the scenario. Now, there are some parts of the game where, yes, you'll be able to get it playable and it might be a good experience, but a majority of it, it's just not. It's not even close to the Steam Deck. And it's just a troubling scenario where I just couldn't understand what was going on for quite a long time until I researched it a little bit and really kind of understood it a little bit more. But that game is unplayable on the ROG Ally or any other Windows-based handheld that I've tried, but flawless on the deck. Cyberpunk 2077 has a little bit of that too, where flawless on the deck. I run into some issues with different settings on the ROG Ally. There's several games like that. And why is that? Well, as you see, the screen just went out on my Steam Deck. The Steam Deck sometimes has games launch with verified settings. And what that means basically is that the Steam Deck gets its own preset. So in Hogwarts Legacy or Armored Core 6 or Baldur's Gate 3, whatever it is, the developers will actually insert files or insert a set of settings specifically for the Steam Deck to be able to run flawlessly on. So that gives Hogwarts Legacy a awesome playable frame rate and no stuttering. That gives Cyberpunk a very good experience, and so on and so forth. Then you have games like Remnant 2 that how exactly they made it through that process, I'm not really sure. 16, 17 frames per second, completely unplayable on the Steam Deck. Runs a little bit better on the ROG Ally, but not really to the point where you'll actually want to do that. And some things will change as time goes on. I'm sure 6 months from now there'll be a patch that makes it far better experience on both. But how long is that going to take? Somebody who bought it day one hoping, hey, this game's deck verified, now I got to exchange it, or dang, man, I'm past my 2 hours for whatever reason. I left it on by accident. I can't get my refund now. I got to wait 6 months or 8 months until there's a patch that solves this issue for me. So it's up in the air sometimes, and you really won't know until you play, or maybe like Baldur's Gate 3. It's going to be verified when we get to the actual day one launch here, and today's the 1st, so it might be after this video comes out. You might want to watch somebody on YouTube and make sure, hey, how well does this verified game play? Because even though it's verified, it doesn't really mean that. And that's the same thing with the ROG Ally. Even though you can play it, you might have to do some tinkering with it. And that's one of the biggest issues I've seen on Reddit or forums or returns through Best Buy is this game or that game just didn't play. And I can throw out a number of different titles. Like I wanted to play Quake 4. Plays fine on the deck. Can't get Quake 4 to play on the ROG Ally at all. It has so many different issues. So with that being said, you're up in the air and you're going to have to try and mess with settings on all of them, regardless of what game it is. So a lot of times from software games, the Dark Souls series, Armored Core, Bethesda games, Doom, Wolfenstein, hopefully Starfield will play just fine on each of these. And you just never know, though. It's so up in the air sometimes. So another issue that Windows-based handhelds, I had this issue with both the ROG Ally and the GPT Win 4, is that a game will launch with an error. And that error is going to be a GPU error where your GPU is not compatible. And for most of us, we don't care. Launch the game, tinker with some settings, runs fine, 50 FPS at 720, and we are thrilled because it works. But it launches with that error every time because the game doesn't know that that hardware can run it, or it's too slow a hardware, but it can still do the job. It just doesn't think it can. And that's something that a lot of people who aren't super techie, aren't super into computers, wouldn't necessarily know. Your average guy going into Best Buy wanting this to be more of a Switch-like experience might return it because of that. So not every game's going to support it, but it still might run, much like there are games on the Steam Deck that say unsupported, but they still run flawlessly. One that comes to mind is Company of Heroes 3. It runs great on the Steam Deck, but says it's unsupported. Runs great on the Ally, but sucks on the GPT Win 4. And that's another scenario. So not only are you thinking, you know, you got trackpads for compatibility on the Steam Deck, you don't have those on the ROG Ally, but then on top of that, it's how the buttons work. So I don't have the GPT Win 4 currently. It's still going through the whole China thing right now, but you can't play a strategy game on there. You can't click and drag very easily. So on the GPT Win 4 and on the ROG Ally, both Windows-based handhelds, you should be able to, in theory, play strategy games. On the Steam Deck, you definitely can. You have the trackpads and the extra buttons to play Company of Heroes, for example. You're able to easily click and drag or click and drag around and move troops wherever you want. On the GPT Win 4, it's almost impossible without setting some extremely crazy functions on the actual joystick, where the little button on the bottom right just doesn't allow you to do that click and drag, and it's very hard. So you really got to be willing to adapt to different handhelds, or willing to just kind of tinker with things until you get them right, because very few games, maybe 4 or 5 that you play, are actually going to work flawlessly without messing with them. So compatibility is always up in the air for the Windows-based handhelds. You never know. Maybe it's going to play flawlessly. Maybe it's going to stutter like crazy no matter what you do. Maybe you can't even play because your GPT Win 4, you can't click and drag very easy. Maybe it pops up with a GPU error, but it still runs okay, but you don't know that. Or maybe it won't launch at all. Maybe you have launch errors on the deck, or it runs like Remnant 2 at 16 FPS. Who really knows? But thank you for watching this video. Let me know what you think about this in the comment section down below. I just had to buy a new graphics card for my sim rig because I thought mine exploded, but it really didn't. Also, if you can see over here, we'll zoom into it, but this is an original Xbox that I just bought off one of my buddies that I want to start tinkering with and modding and doing all kinds of crazy things. So a lot of cool stuff coming to the channel, but the next video is going to be the clamshell conversion on my Steam Deck. So hopefully you guys enjoyed this. If you did, let me know in the comments section down below, and we will see you in the video after this.